Hello everyone, today we're going to talk about Java exceptions. First, we're going to see what is an exception, type of exception, and how you handle exceptions. First, what is an exception in Java? An exception is like disruption during the execution of a program. In a simpler term, it's Java ways of saying, I don't know what to do with it, you should handle it. You take charge, handle the exception, and life goes on smoothly. To clarify, an exception is not an error. Even though Java exception and errors inherit from the same parent class, throwable. Errors indicate a serious problem that should not be tackled within the program. It's like when you are running and you feel a little pain in your knee, or you feel a little bit thirsty. You may try to ignore the pain or run a little bit slower. However, if your bone breaks or you are having a heart attack, you should definitely stop. In Java, exceptions are more like this manageable bump in the road rather than this catastrophic roadblocks. They prompt you to address a specific situation gracefully and ensure overall stability of your program. There are two types of exception: checked exceptions and unchecked exceptions. Checked exceptions are these anticipated exceptions that you are aware of and you plan for them in your code. Dealing with checked exception is like preparing your phone battery to die, and you know it may happen, so you have a strategy for it. Unchecked exception, on the other hand, these are unexpected surprises that can emerge suddenly and potentially crash your application. Unchecked exceptions are comparable to your phone suddenly die off without any warning. The unpredictability makes them challenging to handle. In programming, these issues often arise unexpectedly. They can catch you off guard, and sometimes you might not even be aware of their existence until they occur. One other difference between unchecked and checked exception is checked exceptions are discovered during the compile time, allowing you to address them before running your program. On the other hand, unchecked exceptions reveal themselves during runtime, adding an element of unpredictability to the debugging process. Now, let's take a look into the code and how you should handle all these exceptions.
Now, let's see checked and unchecked exception into the code. First of all, let's see the unchecked exception. For that, we're going to create a simple integer list. After that, let's add only just elements, like 3 elements. Let's add 1, maybe 5. Hold on, just forget the point. And finally, let's add, for example, and let's add a 9 to that. Okay. Now, if we try to access, for example, to print maybe integer dot get, for example, let's access the second element and try to execute that. We can see it's number 5, which is correspondent. Now, imagine if you try to access the 4th element, because like here we added 3 elements, so we don't have any 4th element, we only have 3 elements. If we execute that, we're gonna run into exception. This exception, when I compiled my code, the compiler did not detect anything until I executed, I run my program, and then we can see the exception. It says exception in thread main, and the name of exceptions is index out of bound. This is a special type of exception. So it says here with message index 3 is out of bound for length 3. So you only have 3 elements, and you try to access the 4th element, because you know when you in Java the list start from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So when you write 3, it means you write in the 4th element.
Okay,
Now let's take a look to the checked exception. For that, I will just copy paste a code which just read a file from this current directory, print the three first line of the text file, and then closing the file. The file in question is this file, which is a simple text file. So remember, checked exception are exceptions raised during the compile time. So while writing this code, you see that the file reader writes an exception called file not found exception. So you have to write a code to handle this exception in the compile time. So which take us to our next point, which is how you handle exception. To handle exception is pretty easy. You have to write what we call a try catch block. So you just write here try, and then curly brackets, and you wrap the code that is susceptible to raise an exception between the curly braces of try, and then you write the catch parentheses, and then inside the catch you have to write the exception that you are susceptible to raise. For example, here we have the file reader except file not found exception. So here you have to write file not found exception, and then finish it with a curly brackets, and then you see that the error had disappeared. Here in the catch file, here the catch try catch, in the catch block you have to write a code in case of this exception is written. Here you read some code. If you want, for example, just exit, print something, do something here. But remember, remember one thing, you have to do something. This is really a bad practice if you just print or do nothing. You have to handle this error. Here we have another exception that may be risen, which is input-output exception. You have two ways of writing. Either you can, like, for example, write another block with input exception curly braces, and then do something. You see here the exception has disappeared, the error. So you have to do something. You can write, for example, a single catch block and put both of exception, but this is a bad practice because each exception is risen, you have to deal with it. And for example, this is a file, because like this is a loss of information. If you have the same treatment for both cases, another bad practice I've seen from many juniors developers, they use very abstract, for example, they use, for example, the class exception, which is the parent class of every exception. So here we have treated, but the problem is you have a loss of information. You don't know which class, which exception was risen. So the best practice, like I've said, is to use multiple catch blocks for that. Now we've seen how you can handle the exception with the try-catch block. Now we have the third member of this block, which called finally. Finally is a block that will be called each time that you call a try-catch. What usually people do is put the closing of the file inside the finally. Usually we can use this block, for example, to close database connection, you can use it to, for example, close a file, etc. Another way you can call an exception, let's try to delete the try-catch block here. One thing you can do is to say this function throws, for example, file not found exception. You can see here the error had disappeared. Here you can say that the main function may throws a file not found exception. But the problem is you don't have any plan if this exception was risen. So if you try to run this program and this file doesn't exist, the plan for managing this exception. This is two ways of dealing with this exception. The first one was the try-catch blocks, which allows you to write some code in case this exception happened. And the other one is just to inform in the function that this function throws this kind of exception. So that will be all for today. Thank you for watching and see you in the next episode.